There's absolutely no way for the general public to get out of this mess. They've dug themselves deeper into a hole and they have no idea how to get out. With the elite finding more and more ways to eliminate the need for a human workforce, what will you do? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into it right away. We are looking at people not in the labor force, hitting a record high. So while we are told that the jobs numbers are doing great and you see them reported all the time, the situation is actually getting worse. But it's not just in the past year, it's been going on for decades. The amount of people not in the labor force is simply expanding. The jobs are being shipped overseas, and you'll notice that this is a trend that's been going on for quite some time. It will not be reversed, at least in the foreseeable future. So you need to be able to handle your own situation. You can't rely on another institution, on a government, on a group of people to help you out. You have to do this for yourself. Look at this. QE purchases as a percentage of government bond indices, it's now over 50% in Japan. Look at this. But any way you slice it, you are seeing the QE purchases rising, let's say, since the beginning of the financial crisis. And even though the ECB was late to the party, they all own trillions of dollars in garbage. Their balance sheets have expanded in totality to 15 trillion, and that's what they admit. We know that the central bank, United States, the Fed, they decided that they would print up 16 trillion and not tell anybody. So how much is really out there? We're not even allowed to know. Now, the Deutsche Bank CEO, he thought it would be a great idea to increase productivity. And how do you do that? Well, there's one very simple way. Well, he said that right here, we employ 97,000 people. Most big peers have more like half that number. So what we'll do is we're going to implement artificial intelligence using technology to cut costs. And essentially, this would be the best way to be able to be efficient. I've heard this myself before, and on one hand, I can understand it from a business aspect, where you don't want to employ people that are just standing around doing nothing just to be nice to them, just because they have a wife and kids and they have a family to pay for and to deal with. But at the same time, what I personally saw during the financial crisis, they said that to appease the shareholders, companies, for example, would say, we need to save $10 million. And the way they do that is cost cutting. And most of that cost cutting comes from salaries. So they end up firing not just at 10 million, but they might go to 12 million. And so they fire more people than they even had to. And then the market comes back up. And a year later, 2 years later, whatever it might be, those people come back groveling, begging for their jobs, because maybe they've been on unemployment, maybe they were working some temp work, and they go back to the job. The same boss, maybe some of their coworkers are still there, and life goes on. But what created the mess in the first place? It's these corporations which create these financial instruments, derivatives, that are collapsing this whole market. I'm just trying to think of the little guy, essentially. And speaking of the little guy, the top 3, they got a lot of money, I assure you. The 3 wealthiest people in the United States now own more wealth than the bottom half of the country combined. That's a big number. That's not how they take the, average person in the world who earns less than $1 or $2 a day, and those are poverty statistics that we see all the time. This is in the United States. It's so extreme, the situation right now, but it is not being looked at, it's not being addressed. The fact that a very select few people have control, have the money, have the power over everyone else. It's not the top 1% really, although that's a good name to use, the 1%. They actually do have a lot of power, that top 1%. But the top 0.001% and 0.0001%, the fewer and fewer hands have more and more power. And it doesn't really surprise me to see what happens when you see all of the crises that occur in the past. You'll notice that billions get wiped off, supposedly, get wiped off of these individuals, these billionaires, off their balance sheets, off their asset sheets, whatever. And it looks like, hey, they're hurting too. But after a few years, when the market starts coming up just a little bit, suddenly they've collected a lot more of these different assets. Suddenly their net worth is higher. And by the end of it all, they're doing better than they ever have. While the average person, you get a kick in the backside. All right, quickly here. Speaking of those elite, so-called elite, average hourly earnings, security and armored car services. Over the last year, this has been increasing dramatically. And all I wanted to note with this was that those with more wealth have been seeking more protection. But I do believe that there is this divide that is occurring. And I mention it often. There's the rich, there's the poor, and it doesn't seem like there's that many in between as much as there used to be. Things are certainly changing. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you will find my books, The Money GPS, and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. You can actually flip through these books. If you go over to Amazon, there are links in the description to take you there so you can flip through the books for yourself. Take care.